In this video, we're going to be taking a look at UVs and an understanding of what UVs actually are. So I think a pretty good illustration to help you understand what UVs are is taking a three-dimensional object and laying it out flat. So if you think about the clothing that you have on, if you have a t-shirt on, you can see on your t-shirt that there's different seams, and if you were to take the t-shirt and split it apart at the different seams that you have and lay it out flat, that three-dimensional object that you put on your body was actually a two-dimensional sketch at one point that was turned into patterns out of fabric and then sewn together, and then when you put it on your body, that becomes a full three-dimensional object. So that same kind of principle is going to hold true whenever we work with UVs. We've got this 3D object that's going to be taken and laying out flat in a two-dimensional format. So we've got to take this 3D object, and you can see here I've modeled something that just resembles something like a shirt. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what is considered a planar map. So if we're in the modeling area right here with the menu and we go to UV, we can go to the UV editor window and we can open that up and we can start to see some of the UVs that are on there. So this might make a little bit more sense after I start to actually do a planar map on here. So I'm just going to zoom in and out on here. I'm just doing Alt and left and middle mouse, and you can pan around by holding Alt and middle mouse for that. And what I'm going to do is go to UV, and then we're going to do a planar map, and I'm going to do the option box for this. So it's basically like taking a flat like camera or a projection and pushing it straight through the model. Now I want to actually push it through this axis here, so the Z dimension. So I'm going to put it on a projection from Z, and I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And you can see that if this was think of it as maybe like a window or something, it's kind of like looking through this at the object. Now if you click this corner, you can actually get to some controls for moving it, and you can rotate this like this, and if you rotate it this direction, you can kind of see like what I was talking about. If you think about this being a camera and looking through a camera, that's kind of what is happening here. So I'm just going to click on this for rotate, and you see how this becomes more of like a top-down kind of view. So I'm just going to leave it close to something in the front like this. And the next thing I'm going to do is start working on cutting this thing apart. So I'm going to go ahead and select my edges, so I can right click in here and say edge. I'm going to double click on this edge loop here and hold down shift, double click here, and so you can see I grabbed that edge loop going all the way around. And if you look within here, there's some different tools for things. There's cut and sew. So let's go here to cut, and we can cut that UV that you see right in through there like that. And if you look at your t-shirt, you might have some kind of split going down in through here like that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that as well. And I could leave this as one kind of cylinder, kind of like this, but I'm going to take maybe the top part here and I'm going to split this right here. So I'm going to go cut like this. So you could also do a sew operation. So if you ever wanted to take these and sew it back up, you can select these edges and click sew, and then they're kind of sewn back up. I'm going to hit undo for that. Now Maya's got a tool that I know of that does this really good job of just unfolding these different parts. So if these are different islands, you should be able to double click on an island like this and put on the move tool, W, and you should be able to move that around. Now it's moving both arms because I have symmetry turned on, but if we turn symmetry off, I'm going to double click on this and go to symmetry settings, and I'll turn symmetry off. I should be able to double click on just one of these islands and move that island all by itself like this. We've got a front and a back part of the shirt now, so you can see that this is going to allow me to select the front part. Here's the back part, and then here's the different arms that I've got. So I'm going to double click this to select all the verts within there, and I'm going to use a tool called unfold. So I'm going to unfold this, and if your object does not unfold correctly, it probably means that there's some kind of problem with the geometry, and you might have to go to mesh and then go do cleanup and kind of go through and start trying to discover maybe some of the problems that you have with your model. So it's a little bit out of the scope of this video to kind of talk about model problems, but that's probably the reason why it's not unfolding. So I'm just going to continue to unfold this. And the reason why it kind of looks like this, I've got this in a smooth mesh preview mode. So if I tap 1, you can see here's the base cage for everything, and this is kind of what it looks like. I'll tap 3 for this, and then I'll go to the object mode, hit F8. I'm going to go to modify, convert smooth mesh preview to polygons. So that'll turn those into actual polygons at that point. Let me go ahead and show you this real quick. I'm going to go into the channel box and go to this poly smooth. This is the conversion that it does, and it's put 2 division levels on there. I'm going to put it down to 1, and I think this is a pretty good level for the t-shirt. I'm going to delete the history, Alt-Shift-D, and that's under here, under Edit, delete by type, history. And then now you can see if I right click on here and say UVs, and I unfold, it's going to give me a little bit of a different kind of option for that and what it kind of looks like. So I'll double click this, keep hitting unfold. Now the last thing I can do is take these parts and I can do this. I can do arrange and layout, and I'll just click layout. That's actually coming from these tools within here. Let me find layout, and so it's under modify and layout. And if you do the option box for this, there's some different options that you can do within here. Now I do like this pre-shell scaling. I like to preserve the 3D ratio, so it takes a look at the size of everything in relation to relationship to each other within the world, and it kind of scales it based off of that. So I'll go ahead and apply for that. That usually just scales everything to be about the right size. So if we throw on like this checkered texture, you can see that most of the squares on here should be about the same size. Once that's done, then I can double click these and I can try to rearrange them in this 0 to 1 space. This is where you want your UVs to live. So I can take these and I can rotate them. So I'll take these arms and I'll rotate them into position like this and try to get things lined up a little better. And then this is the back of the shirt. I don't think it really matters where you place it, but if we know that this is the back of the shirt and then this is the front of the shirt, and then maybe I could take this for the arm right in through here. I might just try to figure out like the best way that I could kind of pack these things together. And if I push this here a little bit, maybe this closer, we do want just a little bit of breathing room between these different parts. So when we bake any kind of lighting information or things like that, that the information doesn't bleed over from one object into the other. So you need a little bit of breathing room for that. Now once I've got that kind of packed and arranged like this, I can kind of move it to the center, put on the scale tool, tap R for that, and then to scale up and then try to get it to maximize as much space as I possibly can, leaving just a little bit of bleed in through here. So you can see that's everything that we need to kind of get this set up with the UVs for this piece here. Now every piece is going to be just a little bit different. There are other mapping tools that you can do for objects that are spherical. There's cylindrical mapping, and it works pretty good for the most part. What I could do is try to just show you this this one object real quick, and then I'll show you something that would work for squares, and maybe this cylinder here. So I know this one seems like it's probably a little bit more complicated, but what we can do is we'll go ahead and go to UVs, and we'll do a planar map. This time I'm just going to push it down from the y-axis, so push down like this and hit apply. Now if we go to the UV editor and go take a look at what we've generated for just this part, let's take a look at this here, and it seems as if we've got this thing here. Let me move this off to the side and just find out what part this is. So I actually had multiple parts selected all at the same time, so that's why it's kind of giving me this. Let's open this up and just see under here, under Canon. This is because we've got the barrel. These things are actually parented to this. So I'm just going to hide those pieces right now and just select this piece that we were kind of working with. If you remember what we did before, we went and selected edges. I'm going to try to separate off the end of this like this, and so I'll go back to where we're at for cut, and I'll just cut the end of this. Then I'll go ahead and cut right here. I can tab G for my last command, and that should give us that cut. I'll cut through here, and then I want this to be flat as well, so I'll cut here, and then I could just double click the edge loop that's going down the center of this like this, and then I'll cut that as well. Now if everything works right, if we right click on here and say UVs, we should be able to double click on these parts and then start to move and manipulate and separate out these parts like this. We can select this and we can do the unfold. So we've got that part there. We unfold this, unfold that piece, unfold, and then unfold. Let's select this real quick and see what we've got selected. I'm going to select that, tap F within here. So it's a little part within there. And then this is this part in through here. So if I zoom in on it, let's try to scale this up quite a bit. And you can see what's going on here. If I join this back up, here's where we can sew something together. So I want this to actually be flat and circular. So I can hit F10 or right click on here and say edge, select that edge, and then we're going to go to the cut and sew, and we'll just sew that together. Now let's right click on here and select our UVs and then unfold. See how that turns into this more circular kind of object at that point. I'm going to zoom in on this and right click and say my edge like this, and I'll sew that, and I'll zoom in on this, sew it, right click, and then I can unfold this. So it didn't move a whole lot, but it did move a little. Let's tap F to find this, and what I can do on there is just hit F10 or right click in there and say edge, select that. I can sew that up and then go to UV, and then I'll unfold that and then just scale this up. Try to get the scale a lot larger just so we can see what's going on here with this. So that needs to be scaled up just a little bit like this. And here's where we can use that trick where we do the layout. So once those options are set up, we can go to Arrange and Layout and then just click Layout right there. And that's going to give me the scaling options that I was looking for. So I can select this and I can rotate it into position. And then I can take these other parts and rotate them like so. And this one, because of the shape of the object, we're just not going to be able to optimize tons from that. So we've got this kind of laid out here, and I might need to scale this down just a little bit to get it to fit within there. And so you can see how we've worked this object and already set up some of the UVs. So I'm going to delete the history on it real quick. So this cylinder like this should be pretty straightforward for how you're going to do that. I was going to show you these cylinders really quick, just because we can go and say UVs, and we'll do a planar map. This time you can see I'm going to push a planar map through the x-axis like this and just hit apply. And we'll go ahead and go to UV and go to UV editor window just like this, and let's right click, go to edge, and double click these edges. Actually Maya doesn't like us to select through this like this. I'm not a super big fan of this, but we can right click on here and say face, and we can select this face and then hold on control and hit F10, and that will convert our selection type into edges. So we can grab those real quick. We're going to cut the front. Let's do the same thing we did before. Select the faces, F11, and then control F10 will convert into edges, and then we can cut. And what we should be left with is, if we double click on the UVs for this, we should have this as a shell and this is a shell. So there should be three parts: the front, the back, and then the sides. Now I know if I want these to be laid out kind of flat like this is a track, I'm going to select the bottom part of it, and then I'm going to click cut for that part, and then now I'm just going to select all the pieces and I'm going to unfold like this. And so we've got the back, here's the front, and let's select the faces for this. I'm just going to hold on shift and select these. I'm trying to find the UVs for this and just scale them up. I'm not sure just exactly why it's so small the way that it is. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just hit F11, select those faces, and if this is giving me problems like this, I'm going to do this. We can go UV planar mapping, do the option box for it, and we can actually do mapping based off of the camera. So wherever we're looking, it'll do a projection map from that. And then I'm just going to move this off to the side, select one edge, hit F10, and I'm going to cut that. And then I'm going to go to UV, and then I'm going to unfold. And that's giving us a much better result. So I'm going to select all these, and then we're going to go to Arrange and Layout. And we're going to click Layout, and that's going to give us our scaling that we're kind of looking for. And we're going to move these right here and right here. And we'll double click this, and then rotate it into place, into position. And I know if I'm trying to keep everything the relative same scale, like what I just did there, scaled this part down, it's probably not the best thing to do, but I'm just trying to give as much space as I possibly can. So if we had multiple wheels, we could maybe put another set of wheels down here or something, but you can see how the spacing could kind of work for something like that. The other thing is I'm going to delete history, Alt-Shift-D, and I'm going to transfer the UVs from this to this one. So if we've got the objects that have the same poly count and everything else like that, same topology, it's possible that you can transfer this stuff over. So I'm going to open up the UV editor window just so you can see this happen. Here's the other one that's got different UVs, old UVs for us. So there's definitely a difference between this. Where I want to copy this to this. So I'm going to select this one first, hold down Shift, select this as my second selection. And then we're going to go to Mesh and then Transfer Attributes. And then we're going to go to the option box for that. So we'll go ahead and open that up. And what we're going to transfer is our UV set, our current, and we're going to sample this by component. We'll hit Apply, and you can see now we've got the same UVs on this one. Let's delete the history, and we should be able to transfer UVs from this to this. Hit Apply. You can see we can delete history, and I should be able to transfer UVs from this to this. And delete the history. So that's another way that you can kind of work on these objects and kind of, if you've got the same geometry, you can set up it on one and then transfer it to other pieces. I'd be able to do the same thing with like these grass blades. Now I do already have UVs kind of set up. I kind of just did a planar map for them. So they've all got those kind of UVs on there. So that should be good to go for this. I did want to show you this for these squares. Now I don't really need the bottom of them, they won't be showing, but let's just say we've got a square like this with an open bottom. Now if we did a UV planar map and we did it from the y-axis pushing down and hit Apply, let's take a look at what this gives us in the UV editor window. It gives us this straight down, top down thing that we're looking at. And if we go to UVs and we go to unfold this right here, you can see what it does. It gives us this picture frame, but if we were looking at this with a checkered texture, you can see it gives some stretching just because there's a lot of tension going on in the corners. So one thing that we can do to release the tension on there is if we select these edges on the corners like this, and we actually split them. So we're going to cut the edges there and then right click on here and say UVs, and then we're going to unfold just like this. And now, if we rotate and get this in the 0 to 1 space, like this, and we put on the checker texture, you can see we've got more predictable UVs going on without the stretching. So it's just something to take into consideration if you got like a square object, something like that. You're going to maybe going to have to release the corners on there to avoid some odd kind of stretching. And again, I'll delete the history on that. Now this one, because I deleted the bottom face, that's not going to really transfer from this to these other objects that you see within there. But if you did keep the bottom of it, you could have taken the bottom and just pushed it over here in this area, right in here. And then that would give you probably the options that you're looking for. Some of these other objects, as you created them, it's probably done a pretty good job of maintaining UVs. Like this was a just a polygon plane, and so it had UVs already. So maybe the only thing you might have to do on certain things is just click unfold on it. It looks like that's already working pretty good for those. And then take a look at this, maybe the stem for this. And the stems have a top and a bottom, so you might have to do a little bit of work on the stems for that. But the goal is to get everything into the 0 to 1 space. Now, if you've got multiple objects, like say we did all these different wheels together with the part of the cannon, here's where that layout tool actually comes in pretty handy. We can right click on here, go to our UVs, select all of our UVs, and then we can use layout, and it's going to do a layout with these multiple objects. Now, the spacing that it's putting on here depends on some of the settings that you've got going on for that. So if we do modify layout option box, and you can see that we're doing a texture map size of 512, and we've got the shell padding of 16. If we drop that down to 4, it should get a little bit tighter within there. So you can see it gets the pieces a little bit closer to one another. You might have to scale these down just ever so slightly, like that, just to get it away from the border. But it does the best job that it can to kind of pack these things in. And if you want to rearrange them by hand, kind of like what we did, where you want to straighten things up or kind of rearrange, you're free to do that by selecting these things and moving them. So the computer usually gets you about 85% there or so, and then it's time for you to take control and start working on the changes that are going to be necessary for that. So I'm going to close this out, and hopefully that's enough to get you kind of started on working with these UVs. Again, if the unfold is not working, it usually means that there's some kind of problem with your geometry, and you need to fix your geometry before the unfold tool will actually work correctly.